Hello and welcome to the Personal Podcast, where we meet the real personalities behind the professional. Just a reminder of the 4 rules on the show: no direct business questions, no small talk, honest answers only, and I'm happy for you to flip the question back around to me. Today on the show, I'm delighted to be interviewing Ellie Lowther, who is the founding director of Essential Learning Curve. Now, you know the rules, there's no small talk, so we're straight into a difficult question.
I'm just wondering how I'm going to flip some of the questions around to you.
I was wondering that
That's
as I was...
difficult, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But we'll see how it goes.
You never know, you never know, Ellie.
It's fine.
When did you first realise that you wanted to be a woman?
Oh, no, there's a question, isn't it? Because to my mind, like realising that you want to be, as you say, a woman, it wasn't just a case of like you don't wake up one morning, pass the eyeliner and call me Ellie. There's a long journey, and for me, like I can go back to my childhood, like my dreams when I was a small child, where I was always like, you know, like in the Western movies, I was always wearing a checkered dress tied to the train tracks, and Audie Murphy was coming to rescue me.
Oh.
When I was older, I was always getting married to Jamie from Shameless.
Wow.
And Trisha Penrose and Tara Palmer Tompkinson, they were my best friends in my dreams. Crazy, it really was. But like waking up every day and just being as you're assigned at birth, for me, that just gave me a lot of like internal questions, you know. So like as I was growing up, being trans wasn't a thing because there was no visible role models at all. So it's difficult. It's a difficult. I'm not trying to be evasive, but it's a difficult question to answer. When did you want to be a woman? I think if I could flip that a little bit, I'd say, when did I realise who I was? Do you know what I mean? When did I realise that I was actually like seeing the world through female eyes? And for me, that would have been around about puberty at the beginning of secondary school. First time I had to get changed in a room full of boys. I went from being a grade A student down to somebody who pretty much just got through and ended up leaving with a few, like, you know, really, really bad grades and stuff. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's as honest as I can be.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. Perhaps it was quite an insensitive question, just because you've always felt that way. So
No,
how would you know when you're
that's-
different?
I think that's the thing. I think that's part of the problem with life as well, where people are trying to understand another person's experience. So like I feel like there's a radical middle road where everyone can meet with an understanding. But until we have discussions and conversations such as like this and these in the wider world, then we're never going to reach that place. You know.
I agree.
So I don't think there's a wrong question. I think it's just a case of some questions need to be talked through.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So you always dreamt that you were always a woman in your dreams.
I always felt as if I could see the world through female eyes, and my dreams reaffirmed that.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense. And how would you describe gender dysphoria?
Well, there's a thing, because like for me, I mean, if you have to go back to terms like cisgender and transgender to get that understanding of the difference.
Right.
So like for those that don't know among your listeners, so like they both come from Latin. Cis means on the near or same side of, trans is movement of. So when I was born, I was assigned male at birth. And once you get that assignation at birth, the whole world comes around to affirm that. So, like you say, no one ever has to come out as straight. Then nobody ever has to come out as cisgender because that's the default. So your internal Google, it's filled by parents, science, culture, faith, and peers. That's what I've got it down to. But like, I've got a friend who's actually a trans Buddhist monk, and they were telling me about the spark of life that is you, and the rest of it's just pretty much post-it notes that I put to us that stick on. Now, if your spark of life that is you doesn't agree with all of the information that's coming into your conscious brain around your gender, from your parents, from everything around you, then I feel that creates a sort of an incongruence, which is like two bits of sandpaper rubbing within themselves. Now, people can carry gender dysphoria without wanting to transition, but some other people, that internalized incongruence, if you will, that can turn you into a person that's your own gatekeeper. So you're your own bully, and when you're your own bully, it's easier to be less tolerant of other people. So that's saying about hurt people. I think there's something in that, if that makes sense. So if I was to say gender dysphoria imagine two bits of sandpaper rubbing inside of yourself, just this incongruence that you can't nail. And when I was born in 1966. I'm 57 this year. I don't look it. I've had good hormones.
Brilliant.
but I like, when I was growing up, if you wanted any information, we didn't have the internet. You'd have to go to the library, and who knows written what books were in the library, And as I was growing through my teens, it was through the Section 28 days. So we had no visible references that were out there on the TV from like 70s to the 90s. What did you have? You had like the Murdering Psycho, Murdering Silence of the Lambs, people who were there just as like figures to be mocked and ridiculed, sort of thing. And when that sort of that catchment, gender dysphoria, trans, or non-binary is you, then it's like to come out, you're actually realising that you're coming out into that world of discrimination. So the world's seen me previously before I come out as a cisgender male. And that with all the privilege that brings. So, and like when people say about like people coming out as trans to like gain access to places and all that, why would somebody who's got all that privilege to start with throw that privilege away to become one of the most marginalised people in our communities? So I hope that's give a bit of a round to the question as well.
It has, definitely. Yeah, that really kind of puts it into perspective that two pieces of sandpaper rubbing against each other.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just that incongruence within the self, but it does become your own internalised bully. With that internalised bully, if it's not dealt with, you end up being intolerant of others.
Yeah.
So many cases.
And were you intolerant of others?
Yeah, well, I was a single parent, but I would have been proud if my children weren't gay, to my shame.
Right.
I'm a person of faith, and I never used to think women should be priests.
Right.
But this is like once you come out as trans, I don't feel you need to tell a lie again in your life because you've done with living a lie, sort of thing. So yeah, so I think I was sort of intolerant, but it was masked with a laid back, easy attitude. But underneath that, there was a lot of intolerance within me, definitely, 100%.
That must have been difficult to navigate.
So I think it's. Could you imagine if you say, for instance, take the issue to sexuality. So if you I have no idea about your sexuality, Charlotte.
Yeah.
But if you were lesbian, but you didn't want to be lesbian and you were in a heterosexual relationship.
Yeah.
Then if anyone was coming around in your social circle who was openly lesbian, I imagine that might make you feel a little bit on edge if you were hiding what other people are openly being. So there's a lot of things going on, sort of thing in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one of the reasons for the podcast because, in business, you tend to go around just having small talk and, everything's fine, but you never know what's going on beneath the surface.
And people say, how are you doing? Oh, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I'm fine.
Yeah. And did you have that a lot? Like, were you in kind of a male-dominated career or anything like that?
I've always worked at something, to be fair. Like, I used to be on the post, but pre-transition this is. I used to do door-to-door sales for the Co-op dairies. I used to be on their milk, and I'd be, I ended up creating brand new rounds for them around the country, whether it be Kelso or Team Valley and stuff. And I like that because it allowed me to sort of do my own thing, without having to sort of, and I think I've always tried to lead in an area I've been in, but I realised pre-transition where I was trying to push, I think I was trying to validate or prove my worth because underneath it all I maybe didn't feel that worth.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. There's a lot of different things going on, I mean, when we go into the deep history, there's elements of PTSD, chronic depression, there's all that there, do you know what I mean, sort of thing. So it's like trying to juggle a lot of things as you're moving forward while keeping a smile on your face.
Yeah.
It's a tough gig. It really is a tough gig.
It sounds so hard what you've been through. And that was one of my questions, actually. What are the stages that you've been through psychologically and physically, kind of in your transition?
Well, it starts off with wanting to know what's wrong with you because you don't know what's wrong with you and you think it's one thing or you think it's another. So I was actually working on the post and I got concussion at work and I started having flashbacks of some of the horrible things that had happened in my life. Like when I was 15, I wasn't able to talk to my parents. So I mentioned about my senior school days. When you're in that position where, could you imagine that being an interesting way till your dad gets home conversation, wouldn't it? You know, especially in the back streets of Middlesbrough.
Yeah.
So you lose a detachment with your parents and with your family, that trust. So one day, I ended up going out. So I used to run a milk round off in the morning, and I'd go out the door and it'd be turn right to go and do the milk round. But in my head, it'd either be turn right or turn left. And if I'd have took the left turn, I'd be going off somewhere else. I used to look my life away in David Bowie songs, and like all this sort of thing. And one day I took that left turn, and I ended up being found 4 days later in Bridgend, Micklemorgan. And everything bad that could happen to a runaway happened to me. Actually got reported many years later, but it only got reported after I'd heard an interview with Robert Black on the TV, the quite infamous, well, I don't even want to mention what he was in for, but like, and it just like, it cut through like a knife, and the person that sort of like I ended up getting in the van with, you know, all I knew is that they were called Bobby and they sounded exactly the same as that voice. But he never really admitted to the stuff that he did, and that was one of those where I just wasn't able to tell people about. So because the reason I went away from home was because I couldn't really talk to my parents about how I was. And then when bad things happen, then it's just extra things added on that you don't talk about, so you just sort of like end up carrying it all. And I must have been like, I ended up when I was at the post years later, after many years of dysfunctionality. I got concussion at work, and I started getting flashbacks of all the horrible things. I mean, in my 20s, I looked down the barrel of a sawn-off shotgun. So many occasions where, like, for the click of a finger, I wouldn't be here today, only by the grace of God. I'm also a person of faith. And I thought I've got to go in to get some counselling in a summit, and I went to my doctors. What followed was about 7 years of counselling, and it kept coming around to seeing the world through female eyes. I thought, well, why would anyone choose to be trans? I thought it was a choice. Like, obviously, I'm not trans. If you'd have told me I was trans back then, I'd have got a pet lip and ran away in a sulk. Do you know what I mean? So I thought, well, was it sexuality, maybe? So I went on a date with a bloke, and you've got to be there to know. And I wasn't gay. I just wasn't a gay man. It's as simple as that. So back to the drawing board. I managed to deal with all the horrific things that I'd been through in my life through the 7 years of counselling. It's not all in one go. It's on and off over time.
Yeah.
But I still had this white noise. I still had this feeling that I was seeing the world through female eyes. And my dreams were still very much coming from a female perspective. So my doctor asked me if I'd like some psychoanalytic psychotherapy, and for me, that's the thing that helped me. Truly. And like I was so far in denial where I was thinking, well, it could be anything, but it's definitely not trans. And the one thing that it definitely wasn't was the only thing that actually made sense that it was.
Wow.
So I started writing lists, positives and negatives. On the negative side, it was, you'll get disowned, your church will kick you out, you'll never work again, no one will ever love you. What you're going to tell your family, what you're going to tell the kids, all this stuff, like pretty much a checklist of how to be a pariah in the area you've grown up in and moderately respected. I was 45-year-old.
Yeah.
On the plus side, there was one word, and that one word was me. Now, I didn't know how my transition would go. You know, I was 6 stone heavier than I am now with a bald head and a goatee. I had no idea how it was going to go, but I knew for my life to mean anything, I had to exist. And I'm not one of these people who like have a definitive line of like the old me isn't me, because I'm not really a big fan of the whole term passing. I'd rather help like representing a world where passing as who you are is more important.
Yeah,
because my history
authenticity.
is really important to me, because that's what's brought me to where I am today. So that's where we kicked off with the whole free to be me thing, you know, and because I think for me, what I needed to be free to be me. For me, I had to. For me, it was really important to go down the medical route as well, with the whole gender stuff and the services. I can tell you now, Charlotte, like the current waiting list, 5 years. When I come out in 2010, it was 2 years. I think of all the stuff I've done, and we're not talking about work here, but from a community sense, all the stuff that I've done over time, like the housing projects and all that stuff, I know I've done good stuff over time for lots of people. Now, I also know that in the current climate, if I was where I was now in 2010, I don't think I'd be coming out as trans. And
Really?
yeah, really, because it's much more difficult now. Now you've got politicians who are speaking against the existence of trans people. You've got laws around the world which are diminishing the rights of trans people. And if you can keep your head down and just not be on the radar, then that seems like, to my mind, I think that would be a choice that I would go down now. And that really makes me sad because I think all the work I've done in the past decade, there's people who could be coming out today who would be doing that and more in the following decade. You know what I mean? Because I'm doing this stuff till I'm 60-year-old. Then I'm going to have a vegan fast food van and I'm going to have a mobile karaoke as a drag king called Ellie.
Amazing.
I kid you not.
I'll look out for it.
Yeah, seriously, it's going to be a thing, I promise you. So if anyone out there does Elvis suits, give me a shout. But it makes me sad to think that some people could be coming out today who would duplicate and build on the work of others. You know, when I was growing up, Charlotte, there was somebody who lived 2 streets away from me, and it was somebody who was assigned male at birth, and they used to wear makeup and dresses and stuff. I think they must have liked her because there was a lot of blue mascara and stuff. And we were told that was the bogeyman. You don't go anywhere near that person. If you go in the house, they'll never be seen again. You don't want that. But we were told that by the people who cared about us. So it's little wonder that people are brought up with this sort of like not sure feeling around trans and stuff. And I understand that I have a platform now. I mean, like you do great podcasts and stuff. But could you imagine back in those days if you were doing podcasts, I wouldn't even be a consideration to be a guest on them.
Yeah.
We can't be what we can't see. You know, and it's like when I think about role models and all that type of stuff, I think to myself, like it isn't lost on me that the only reason I have a platform is on the bruises and the tears and the deaths of those that have gone before in those times. So I don't take it lightly. You know, and if I get the opportunity to come and have a chat, I always say yes because I realise I'm in a privileged position where people actually want me to come and have these chats. So that's what I do, and that's why I do what I do.
That's amazing. You're answering so many questions and your amazing answers. And I mean, it really sounds like you've been through a lot. Like it must have taken a toll on you.
I always say to my friends, you've got through 100% of everything that you've faced in your life. Do you know what I mean? So all you do is you just keep going forward. You know, I had my own little community radio show, and I had a group of NCS young people on it one week. And this lad said to me, Ellie, he says, why do they call us the snowflake generation? Because we care about each other. And I thought to myself, that's one of the most profound things anyone's ever said to me. And it made me realise that the future is going to be more inclusive. The young people today haven't got as much time for all the isms that the older people had. But it's not the older people's fault either because people are brought up in a certain way. And like, you know, you can look back and if you were an unmarried mother back in the 50s and 60s, all the shame that was around that. You could be just a regular girl in the before 1980s. You couldn't get your own house without a man's signature on it. The world is on its way somewhere. And even though there's choppy waters, I believe we just have to keep the world safe and keep going forward and just trust that the young people will just lead the way forward. So that's why I always say, like, it's always good to get the voices of young people because they're the people who are actually taking it forward.
Definitely. And for you, what does a truly inclusive future look like?
A truly inclusive future is a future where the value of passing is diminished, you know, because in our world, you know, well, I say in our world, in the world of like queer communities, if you will, LGBTQ plus and allies, there's a value in passing.
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Passing is where, so say for instance, you, like, forgive me for saying, but you look like you were assigned female at birth. So if you happen to be trans, if you were assigned male at birth and your transition went really well, then you would be able to sit there and people you meet would not know that of your history.
Right.
Whereas, like, but if you were in a new company and nobody knew you were trans, then you would have part of your mind remanufacturing a past if you were talking about your childhood and stuff.
Right, yeah.
For me, it's really important that we don't have that disconnect, because
okay.
as a person, as a whole person, that involves all of us, which includes the challenges that we've faced along the way. I'm a woman, but like I'm also a trans woman.
Okay.
My father was born in Calcutta, so technically I'd be Anglo-Indian.
Right.
I have hidden disabilities. I'm a woman with we have many words that we can put before or after the word woman. You know, I'm a woman with a bit of French heritage. Do you know what I mean? Sort of thing. And these are all adjectives, but the key word is like in my life, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
You know, and I think we just get ourselves tied up too much in some of and we use some of these terms almost as a stick to beat each other with.
Yes, yeah.
But anybody who's using language to beat another person, I really feel as if they need to look at where their snags are, what's hurt them, what's
Absolutely,
made them
yeah.
that person. Because I don't believe anybody is born hateful. I don't believe anybody is born like a homophobe, a transphobe, racism, all this type of stuff. I think these are all learnt behaviours.
Yeah, it's culture.
And but the young people are actually leading the way in unlearning these behaviours. That's why I'm all for sort of like platforming the younger voices.
Oh, I agree. And I think, you know, there's too many labels in my eyes. It'd be nice to just say, you know, we're human.
But I know, but if you could say, well, we're all human, and then I could come in the room and then like we are all human, but that doesn't stop a person from misgendering somebody. It doesn't stop a person. I mean, for instance, I had a meeting years ago with Mayor Mallon, who was Robocop at the time, and I went into his mayoral office, and I was thinking I'd be going in to talk about trans rights and stuff, and he'd come in and he says, "I don't get it, me." He says, "When did you start liking men?" I thought this isn't going to go well. And to be fair, it didn't. Do you know what I mean? To be fair, it didn't. But like he was coming from his tough guy angle, maybe. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? And I think, so, you know, it's like where people say, "Oh, you're okay with me? I've got some friends who are gay." And then they'll call me by my old name, or they'll call me he, or "Can I help you, sir?" And then they think they're like, "Oh, what's the problem with him?" Do you know what I mean? "Oh, he's in a huff just because I called him he."
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I've told him I accept him by using the language. We accept people by the language we use when we're talking inclusively, don't we? So for me, it's like, you know, it's like if you think that Bob Marley song, "Until the Colour of a Man's Skin's no more significance than the colour of his eyes," I think it's exactly the same around gender, and it's exactly the same around sexuality, where everyone is able to be and there is no hierarchy. But then we have to realise that we're living in a world where nobody has to come out as straight, nobody has to come out as cisgender. And, you know, I talk to people about shapes. You know, like imagine like you've got an oblong and a rectangle, they look the same, don't they? But a square's also a rectangle, a rhombus is also a rectangle. You know, we're living in a world where most people don't know them simple facts. Do you know what I mean? So, and like the square, you've got to keep coming out of the box. But if you're LGB, then the structure's there for the Equality Act to give you your rights. But if you're looking at the rhombus as like non-binary and intersex people, they don't even have the structure to exist. You know, there's over 100,000 intersex people in the UK that our society has put through surgery, you know, in the first year of their life to fit them into the binary.
Wow.
I believe humanity is on a journey, and we're maybe another 10, 20, 30 years away from actually dealing with it. I believe the understanding of trans and non-binary is a little more than a stepping stone to the world where intersex people have the rights. And like they say, like I say, cisgender people should shout out for trans rights. Trans people and cisgender people should shout out for non-binary and intersex rights, because that's, you know, that's actually an inclusive world circling around and not leaving anybody behind. Now I know, like, not in my lifetime we're going to see intersex people have the structures in place for them to exist, like a neutral birth certificate. But that doesn't mean that I don't sit there and like bang the drum for that. Because, you know, the whole thing about we plant seeds for trees we may never see the fruit of. But if we don't plant the seeds, where we're going to get? We're just going to be living in a bloody car park, pardon the French.
Oh, that's a lovely expression. We plant seeds that we may never see the fruit of.
Oh, it's not mine. It's not mine. I've just pinched it from somewhere, But it's absolutely true.
Definitely.
You plant seeds for trees you may never taste the fruit of.
That's lovely. Yeah.
Oh, I'm the queen of cliches, but I charge by the hour.
I really like that. I'll attribute that quote to you.
Bless you.
We touched on pronouns a little bit there.
Yes.
How do you prefer to be addressed, or is it all personal preference? Is it they or she?
I'm she. I'm she and her. But when I'm in a room in a meeting, or if I'm sat with people, and they do the round of the name and the pronouns, and I'm the trans person in the room, I get the feeling that they're doing it because there's a trans person in the room.
Right.
Whereas I get the feeling if there wasn't a trans person in the room, they maybe wouldn't do that. So when it comes to me, I always say, my name's Ellie, my pronouns are beautiful and gorgeous, but I'll settle for she and her. Sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's, and I understand about the pronouns, but I think before we can start holding people to account with pronouns, I think we need to realise the neopronouns as well.
Oh, okay.
So so say in the northern England there's a pronoun called thon, which means that one. And
Right.
so I've got I do a mentorship thing, Thon Collective, but people say about oh, I don't get all of these neopronouns. This has been on the go since the 1800s. You go in the farming villages in some of the rural places, and where's thou going? And all of that, they'd all be classed as the neo.
Oh, interesting.
At the end of the day, if you're ever stuck on people's pronouns, just go with the name.
Yeah.
And
I always like to do that anyway.
Yeah.
It was drummed into me when I was young that she is the cat's mother, and so I
Yes.
have to use the name.
Then I'm sure you understand that if you were using he or she in a conversation that you're having with an individual, you wouldn't use the word he or she when talking directly to me.
Of course, yeah.
You would use my name. We only we only use pronouns for those who aren't in the room. So,
Yeah.
and when you're looking at inclusivity and stuff, we need to make our places inclusive for the people who aren't in the room. It's not rocket science.
Yeah. No, of course.
It's just being aware of it. And I think sometimes there's a lot of apathy
Yes.
around people because, oh, no, and people talk about woke as if it's a negative thing, this woke. And I don't get it. Because would you rather be asleep to the challenges or awake to the challenges? Because I seen this funny headline. It's not funny, but I just giggled at it. And what was it that says, we need to wake up to all this woke nonsense. I thought,
Yeah.
do you know what I mean? It's sort of So
Yeah,
I'm a ramble. I can go on. We might not get through all your questions.
No,
so
that's fine.
sorry.
You're
We'll try
answering
our
so
best.
much all in one answer, which is fantastic. But have you ever been a victim of abuse because of the fact you wanted to transition?
Yeah, the first year I come out as trans. Well, I'd say that on on another level, absolutely. So, when I was understanding who I was and the feelings I had in the changing room when I was at school and all of that type of stuff, constantly feeling like the child that was bullied because I just didn't know my place. But once I did come out as trans, in the first year of coming out, I was beaten up twice and sexually assaulted once. One time I left my flat in Linthorpe Village and I walked up to town and I was spat at, I was ridiculed by people, all sorts. It was horrible. And that was the day I decided that I had to leave Middlesbrough, and that was the town I was born in. The only kind word I got that day was from a young girl in Home Bargains. And it's shone, it stuck out like a sore thumb, but it was absolutely horrible. It really was. There was a time when I was jumped by two lads, and I've always put that down to myself a little bit as well, because I was visiting a friend, and it was maybe 10:30 at night. I was coming home, and I was coming home by the side of Clairville Stadium. For those who don't know, it's like this dark road, isn't it, down the side near the fire station, and pre-transition, as somebody who was presenting as male, that wouldn't have been a problem. But I was early in transition, and even though I was identifying as female, I wasn't aware of the challenges that would be faced by somebody presenting as female walking down that road. And I ended up getting, like I say, I got beat up, thrown into the fence, all this type of stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was just made me decide to leave, and I ended up, with a bit of help, ended up moving up to Lingdale in East Cleveland.
Right.
And people says, oh, they won't have you up there. And I think if you join a village, you've got to join a village. You can't expect a village to join you.
Mm-hmm.
So I contacted the church up there to start with and spoke to the minister, like, would I be welcome? They said yes, very much so. So I ended up joining the church. I was volunteering the food bank. I was the church's representative at the Northern Synod. And I stood for election in the Lockwood ward and actually come second. I beat Labour and Conservative.
Amazing.
Yeah, no, there's a Lingdale Forum there which only exists because I created it and it's got thousands of members. And I always said that I'd go back there, but I realised that life is a forward step. So, like, I also know now that I would never go back there, even though I say to people I was born in Boroughmaid in Lingdale.
Oh, I love that.
You know, but I understand, I don't know where my future is. You know, my future could just as easily be in Glasgow, it could be down south, it could be anywhere, because I'm a big fan of serendipity.
Yeah.
You know, like, so, like, I leave myself open to things. Imagine, I don't know if you've ever seen Father Ted, Charlotte, the TV show.
Yes.
So it's one of my favourite TV shows. It's a shame about Graham Lennon, but we'll put that on one side. And it's like when Father Jack wakes up after being drunk for so many years, he goes, I'm still on this island. and I felt as if I woke up age 45. And like now, you know, I get up on a morning and I try and do the best I can with the day that I've got. But I've got one of these things whereas I'll do that every day and I wake up the next day as if I've done nothing. And I realise as I go forward, I get better opportunities presented to me. But I just keep taking that passion and that joy of what I'm doing because I understand that every day of my life is an actual gift.
Oh, that's really
you know,
lovely.
sort of thing. So I'm not driven by like finance and all that type of stuff. I'm driven by making a difference.
Yeah.
You know, sort of thing. And like, and if I can knock and open doors for other people who are in this area, then I want to be doing that.
Oh, definitely.
Because I think that's the way forward. Too many times people who are, especially, I think it's quite funny when people are working in inclusion and they're all working in silo and no one's talking to each other and it's not very inclusive. Because everyone's worried about, you know, we're all under pressure work-wise, but I think a community that supports each other is a community that grows together.
Absolutely.
We've just got to get over ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, and a community that helps other communities
Yeah,
is even stronger.
100%. Well, we do, you know, the free to be me thing. So, like for me, free to be me is a really important thing because I'm a person of faith. I'm trans. You know, I cover a lot of catchments.
Yeah.
And I realise that like intersectionality is so important, and that means having the difficult cultural conversations with other protected groups as well. Because if we can't have those difficult conversations, what hope have any of us got out there in the bigger world? So like I'm always up for like blurring the lines a bit. I mean, you can look at like people who are Anglo-Indian, for instance. Like that's a whole topic in itself of people who sort of like shrug off and diminish any past heritage because they didn't feel like they fit in. And then when they try and go somewhere else, it doesn't get left behind. So when I was being brought up, I was called half-caste.
Right.
In the winter, I look a lot lighter than I do in the summer. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And it's like, it's just. I think I'm a big fan of Soren Kierkegaard. And it's like when you're looking at philosophy, his gig was all truth is subjective. So your truth is different to mine,
True.
But both of our truths are absolutely valid, you know. But that's how difficult the world is. 8 billion people on the planet. Everyone's got their own truth going on. Imagine we've all got our own gig playing, and we're all playing at the same time. It's little wonder we get anything done, to be fair. So that's why we have to find a bit of harmony. And I suppose that leads us into talking about systemic harmony.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what I'm proud of.
Yes, go on, go for it.
Right. Well, when lockdown first come on, nobody was getting any work done. So I went and got a job with a care company. And I was sat out in the car park one day, and I love singing. I do. And
Feel free to sing now. If
you know something, if you had a few people in here, I could get us going with a round of Yesterday. But I love Les Mis as well, and I've always wanted to be in a Les Miserables flash mob.
Oh wow!
So it's happening. So I come, and I love a good acronym.
Oh yes.
So I come up with systemic. In a world of systemic abuse, racism, and oppression, I mean, I wanted a positive systemic. So my systemic stands for Sing Your Song, True Equality Matters, Inclusive Choir. And
very well done.
I told you, I like it, I got acronym. And we started off about 9-10 months ago, meeting twice a month in the Ark. And there's been times when very few people have turned up, but as time's gone by, people have come along. And now there's like it's so lovely. It is so lovely. We ended up, we were at the Shine Festival at the Town Hall a couple of weeks ago. They had us as the last choir on. We had Dan Donnelly, who can I say, Dan Donnelly from the Levellers with us.
Oh, yeah.
And because I always said to him, his song Shine needs a choir behind it. So that's what we did.
Oh, wow.
We did 4 songs and we brought some people to tears. It wasn't because we were that bad. It was because it was just that lovely. And we all had Free to Be Me T-shirts on, and it's just, and like, it's one of those things where it's one thing in the week that I know brings me joy. And when you see the people who are engaging with it, and like you see them there just singing their hearts out, you know, it's, for me, that's what it's all about. And even when I go around different places now, like I set up little systemics here and there on little teams, like, do you want to, let's do this. And I'll always record it as well so they can have it. You know, I said, you can't work together if you can't sing together in harmony. Do you know what I mean? Just transfer it a bit.
Yeah, it's a good team building exercise.
It's thing is in life, you know, because it's life's a dirge at times, isn't it? Life's a slog from one day to the next. And if you can have bits of sunshine just to brighten it along. And for me, that's what systemic is. And I think systemic, it's the most beautiful concept I have ever dreamt up in my life. And I've done some stuff, but systemic is the most beautiful thing I've ever dreamt in my life. And I'm excited to see where that goes. I think there should be systemics all over the country.
Maybe there will be one day.
Well, there will, you know, something. The thing is, it's true equality matters. So it's not a case of everyone comes and there's no money to be made on it at all. So everyone brings the heart. No ticket prices to enter, because we're not having the hierarchy of some people can get a free ticket and some. Everyone's welcome. And I think when people come together, it's pure community. And I think I can see it growing. Yeah.
And you'll be helping more people than you realise. And I wonder, was there anyone helping you through your dark days earlier on?
Sorry to interrupt, but just a quick word about our sponsor, Be Daily. I've been subscribing to the Be Daily now since starting my business. It provides relevant and informative information directly to my inbox, not just about the North East, but also national news. If you're interested in subscribing, we'll put the link in the description box so you can get the business news directly to your inbox. Now back to the podcast.
You know, I can honestly say that now I'm 11 years post-transition. When I first come out, I was disowned by my mother had passed away 2 years before I came out. And I know she wouldn't have been happy to start with, but I know now she'd be really proud of me. I know she would. I'm still disowned by my father. I'm not allowed over the doorstep. My brother and my sister haven't spoken to me in over a decade. I suppose I'm the family embarrassment for being trans, but it's just a bit unlucky for them that the family embarrassment for the being trans as a local radio show and it gets itself out there. Do you know what I mean? I can't judge what another person thinks. All I can do is live my life.
Must be hard, though.
It really is. But you know, when I was moving forward, I realised the value of found family. You know, I truly do. So I'm Auntie Ellie to many people.
Oh,
you know,
lovely.
sort of thing. But I've also got many sisters and many brothers that are there for me, and they aren't all trans. There's a lot of cisgender people that our paths have crossed since I've transitioned, and I now have a supportive family around me.
What about your child? Do you have a child, a son or daughter?
I have 4 children.
4 children. Mm-hmm.
3 of them are totally on board. 1 isn't there yet, but I'm sort of the person, I never close the door, because I hope one day that the door's open for all of them. I'm also the proudest nana in the world.
Oh, lovely.
And, you know, my granddaughter, she actually sang with us at the Shine Festival with my son and his girlfriend. And they told her about me being trans when she was about 7 or 8 year old. And I was like, that day I had to put a bit of makeup on and make sure I was dressed nicely, because she's only ever known me as me.
Yeah.
You know, because anyway, so she says, Nana, she says, I had to take everything I thought on you out of my head, put the new information in and put it all in. But it's okay because it all fits.
Oh, that's so lovely.
I know, and she says, anyway, Nana, she says, how long have you been a girl? I said, 10 years. She says, I've been a girl 7 years. I said, cool, innit? She says, yeah.
Oh, it's so pure.
Should we go to McDonald's? Yeah. That was it. And I know she's so proud of me as well. But the strange thing is a week or 2 later, she says, Nana, I says, yeah. She says, You know, I already knew about all this stuff in school. She goes to a Catholic school. They'd already taught her about everyone being different. Some people love different people, and
Mm-hmm.
you know the wider LGBT. And for me, that was really, really. I was a little bit shocked that she'd actually learned about inclusion within school
Shocked in a good or bad
in a
way?
in a good
A
in
good
a
way.
massively good way, massively
Mm-hmm.
positive way. Because I think sometimes people don't like to tell young people because in case they get bullied at school and stuff. But
Mm.
if they're, you know, because imagine if, like, say if your parents come out as trans, you could feel a sense of abandonment. If you have a child comes out as trans, you could feel a sense of grief. You know, lifelong friends can feel a friendship's based on a lie. So if you're in a school scenario, it's very much built on hierarchy, isn't it? School
Mm-hmm.
playgrounds.
Yeah.
So if someone comes out as different, the people around the person all will all get tarnished with whatever. You know, if
Mm.
you're friends with
Hadn't
that
thought of it like
person
that.
and that. So it's like, so if they're actually coming from a place of inclusion where everyone can just be their best selves,
Mm-hmm.
then that's fine. I mean, that ties into the whole thing about, you know, like the whole thing about trans people and puberty blockers and all this, that, and the other,
Yes, that
doesn't
was a
it? Do you know what
question
I mean?
actually.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
noticed it was on the
Mm.
list.
Yeah, because there's a lot in the news about it. Do you feel there should be an age limit, or what do you think the minimum age should be?
First of all, I would say that if a child socially transitions, then there is no medical, nothing there whatsoever. If a
Mm.
child socially transitioned, bear in mind we're looking at the discussions around sports are
Yeah.
saying that you can only compete if you were on puberty blockers, if you had your puberty arrested. But the other side of the laws are they're stopping giving that service to young people. Now, so it's in a catch-22
Mm.
situation. Some of the gender critical voices will spout saying that children are going through surgeries and all that type of stuff when they're young, and that's absolute nonsense. You know, I don't know of anybody in that position. On the other side, you go to see your doctor today, you're going to be waiting 5 years before you get your first appointment anyway.
Yeah.
So it's an attack on poverty rather than because if you can afford to go private, then you can go private and you're not going to have them big long waiting lists. But if I'd have had support when I was younger, I don't think I would have had the first 45 years of my life in the cloud that it was in. I truly don't. And if a child, I mean, I've supported so many people who've gone through transition. If you allow somebody to explore their gender and then freely, then if they are going to come back round, then they're going to come back round to a more level-headed person because they haven't had to oppress any of these
Mm.
feelings
Mm-hmm.
anyway, you know.
Yeah.
And I know, like I've actively and positively supported 4 people that have detransitioned. And you support them with the same passion that you support somebody who's transitioning.
Mm-hmm.
We can't say somebody crossed the Rubicon and all go clap handies if we don't realise for some people they're going to explore and then realise that isn't for them.
Yes.
Because it isn't always about parents and the society not accepting. Sometimes we have to allow people. It's like no decision is final. If you understand where I'm coming from.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I've got no issue with young people exploring their gender. Insofar as healthcare is concerned, if something is a service through the NHS, I would leave it to the medical professionals to decide what's appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Young people who have precocious puberty are prescribed puberty blockers anyway, just as a matter of course.
Right.
It's not a massive thing to my understanding from my like looking into trying to educate myself as much as I can. Now obviously some people who are against people actually transitioning, they seem to be against the expression
Right.
rather than the identity, which is why you're having all of the kick-off around drag queen story hours and all that type of stuff, as if it's bringing something inappropriate. And, you know, it always reminds me of that old poem about first they came for these people and I wasn't one of them, then they came for these people, I wasn't one of them. If there's a way where people can find they can strip rights away from trans people, then that gives them a tool to roll back rights for LGBT people. We only have to look back through history to see how low humanity can go in this area, and that covers disabled people and all sorts of things when you look back in the history of it all. I think if we learn from the past, we can go forward, and that's why I'm quite confident in a more inclusive future, because young people today, they've got the benefit of the internet. They can see how people created history in the past. And when I grew up, I didn't know how people created history. I don't think people over the centuries have realised the history they were creating because they were there just in the moment.
Yeah.
But now people can see how all these other cultures have gone by, you know, sort of thing. I think insofar as faith's concerned as well, like I do, like let's talk trans Christian perspective.
Yeah, I wondered about that.
If people, well, put it this way, in Islam, in the Hadiths, there was a trans person and some followers were going to attack them. And the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, let that person live, go in peace. The term in Islam is called Manathan.
Right.
In Christianity, the first Gentile convert to Christianity was the Ethiopian eunuch. Jesus never said nothing about gay people. But what he said about eunuchs was some people are born, some people are made, some people are make themselves. Take the made and make themselves out. So some people are born. That's recognising people born in the in-between. It says God has a special place in the kingdom and gives them a special name. I don't believe that's abomination. I really don't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think people can choose anything to sort of like discredit, diminish, and put people down and divide people up. That isn't inclusion. Sometimes it's going to be difficult to include people. That's where we have to challenge ourselves, not challenge the person we're trying to include. So can they change themselves a bit so we can accept them? Or can we change our understanding so we can accept the community that was there? Because it's recognising the community, if that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense.
You know, sort of thing. I don't think it's rocket science, but I think people are so invested in these lines that they've drawn. And like when you know something, that's it. I don't need to know anything else. But if you're old school and you know what you know, you're living your life with blinkers on. You know, like Charlotte, tell me something in life that's binary, apart from the understanding of male and female in our culture, and the computer.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
If you're going to say computer, I'd say what do all the F numbers do on the top of your keyboard? I've never known one person who knows them all.
No.
And if you're also going to claim computers are binary and that helps with understanding, can anyone explain to me how an email gets from my computer to yours? Because that's still witchcraft to me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It actually is. We rely on this because we know it works. But in life, that is the only thing, the ones and zeros for the logarithms.
Yeah.
Nothing in life is binary. Nothing.
Yeah, it's interesting because even in the French language, like tables, for example, everything is male or female.
It flips from, is it German to Spanish? It flips where a key and a bridge is one is male and female in one, and then you flip it over to the other one. It's the opposite side in the other. And like we put so much value on words and stuff, but at the end of the day, I just feel as if anyone using a perception of faith to exclude another person is not actually following the tenets of their faith. I'm a person of faith, and my faith is stronger now than it ever was. And there isn't an infallibility in the church. I could say Pope Gregory IX, when he decided that all cats were evil, so thou shalt not suffer a cat to live. 50 years later, you had the bubonic plague because there was no cats. You've got when slavery was abolished, parts of the Catholic Church got in today's money up to £8 million in compensation to give the slaves up. When you look at all the single mothers over in Ireland and all of this type of stuff, and that's not even touching on some of the more serious things that's happened in the last century. There isn't an infallibility with faith. People are deciding what is.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it feels
how they
that way.
it. Yeah.
And then in the future, we could say, oh, yeah, well, we got that wrong. We got that wrong as we go forward. Do you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, if we can just remember, Jesus never said a word about gay people. Not one word.
Yeah.
And the only thing that was mentioned around gender variance is the Ethiopian eunuch. And Jesus made it clear that those people have a special place in the kingdom. But then again, you've got people who don't have any time for faith at all, and I think it's because of the divisive natures and the whole splitting people up into little ghetto catchments. Well, I think people sort of lose faith.
Yeah, with faith.
Not losing faith with faith, losing faith with some of the organised structures of faith. Because you have to be true to what you feel and what you believe.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't describe myself as religious, but I do believe in other things.
If you had a child that had come out as gay and your church told you that you had to disown that child or you had to leave the church, that's a decision some people have. I've got a friend and they were put through conversion therapy almost 200 times trying to exorcise the gay out of them.
Oh my goodness.
I kid you not. You know, it's like there's so many horrific stories in this area that would literally make your hair curl. And I just hope as time goes forward, people are brave enough to speak about these. I mean, I actually did a podcast on my radio show about the lad who had all the conversion therapy issues. Yeah. You know, and I think it's really important that these voices are out there.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, I'm just a working class person from a back street to the borough. 6 of us in a 2-up-2-down house. If there wasn't a dog asleep on your bed, there was something wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's my background, you know, sort of thing. And like, you know, growing up, the best anyone could hope for was to go and either work at British Steel or the docks. You know,
no, good for you.
I've always been me, do you know what I mean?
Which is so important, you know, I think. And
whoever you are, I think the biggest thing is identify who you are.
Yes.
And then when you are who you are, and like I hate when some people say find your tribe, because I don't use that word because that's appropriating the word, as I've learned, because it's used as derogatory in some cultures. But find your family. If you were authentically yourself, your family will find you. I believe that, you know, and if you do and you can't, give me a shout and I'll point you towards them because I know all sorts of people.
Brilliant. So you recently had surgery to fully transition. I just wondered how the recovery process was and if you're pleased with the results.
You know something, it was amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. I needed to lose 4 stone to get my surgery. I discovered yoga. Seriously, 4 months, I lost 4 stone in 4 months.
Wow.
And it was just because I stopped eating my feelings.
Yeah.
You know, and that made such a difference anyway. So I got my surgery and it was with Mr. Thomas in Brighton, and I ended up having my post-surgery check on his last day in the before he retired. And sadly, within a year of him retiring, he actually passed away.
Oh,
and that
so
hit
sad.
the community hard. It really did. Absolute legend of a man. But when I went in to get my post-op thingy, he says, done a good job there, haven't I, Ellie? I said, you have, Mr. Thomas. He says, do you want the tour? I said, go on then. So, and it was what they call it. It was like I'd never been under anaesthetic in my life before. Never been under anaesthetic. And as I'm going down to the operating theatre, I'm thinking, this might be the last time I see this wall. This might be like...
Oh, I know
but
the
way through my surgery, all the way through my transition, I always made it important to have schedule meetings with myself. And by having a meeting with myself, I'm saying, right, am I on the right path? What the hell am I doing? You know, sort of thing. And even the night before I went for my surgery, and I'm in Brighton Hospital, I had a meeting with myself, and I thought, because if this isn't right, this is a big thing. You know, I need to know this is right. And I've always like found out once I come out of surgery, I experienced gender euphoria. I literally felt as if there was a weight lifted off my shoulder. Straight away, as I was being wheeled back, the anaesthetist said to me, because I was really nervous, I said to them, I says, what was the first thing? I says, when I woke up, and they said to me, they says, hang on, I'm not asleep yet. But as I'm coming back and it was done, and all the packing was on and everything, I literally felt like a weight lift off me. And that was like euphoria, if you will.
Yeah.
And moving forward, there hasn't been a day that I've regretted it. And I'm not going to go too far down. I'm sort of like an anti-Ellie character. I don't go down the let's talk racy stuff route. But I don't.
You can talk about whatever you like.
No, I'm not doing that.
Okay.
But what I would say is I realised that the recovery took about, physically, around about 10 weeks to 3 months, physically. But to actually get feelings and like noticeable things, that was about 11 months after the surgery.
Wow, that's a long time.
I started getting these twinges and I went on a mad month. And I'm not like that at all. I'm really not. But I thought, well, you know, anyway.
You've got to test it out, haven't you?
Well, I did. Anyway, so like I'm back into my nun phase now. But because I understand the best relationship I can have is with myself. And you see online, I could get people coming around to have dalliances with, but then people wouldn't walk down the street with you. So,
Oh,
and
that's
I'm
so
not.
sad.
That's the reality for people. Often, you know, if you're not like in a relationship where people know you're, if you're not within the community, that is like the reality of it for quite a few of us. Well, that's a reality for me. Not speaking for other people, but that's a reality for me. So I realise that my best relationship is with myself, and I haven't gone through all of this to compromise myself to be somebody's secret.
Absolutely.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean, absolutely, I'm open to relationships, but I'm quite picky as well.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Sort of thing. But pre-transition, you know, I classed myself as a heterosexual male.
Okay. Yeah.
And this is interesting.
Yeah.
So, like, after surgery and everything, I'm on the bus, and I'm thinking to myself, I told you about buses and that. No, I used to have life of buses where I do my poetry, but I was on the bus one day, and this man come on the bus with this beard thing going on, and this aftershave thing going on. I start getting butterflies in my tummy, and I sort of thought, this is new, but I think I had to be where I was to be able to have that realization. I could never be that as I was previously.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And I
Yeah.
think you've got to be comfortable within your authentic self before you can even make those decisions. So I call myself pansexual these days. Throw it in
Okay.
the pan. No, I'm throwing pan. No, meaning like it's literally about the hearts, not the parts. You know,
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
thing. And like,
That's a
'cause
nice
you
saying.
can have a connection with somebody, and you might not be able to rationalize that connection,
Totally.
but you could be absolutely besotted with somebody. You could feel that, you know what I mean, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's recognising that. So for me, that's where pansexual differs from bisexual, because it also includes non-binary and trans people. You see, with the GRC process, there's thousands of men in this country that haven't had downstairs surgery, but they have a male birth certificate. Similar with thousands of women in the country that haven't had downstairs surgery, but they've got a female birth certificate. The world needs to catch up.
Yeah.
But we're too busy looking at the front page of the paper and demonising all trans people as predators.
You're right.
Like we were in the 70s with gay people. You know, like we were in the 50s with people from other cultures.
Yeah.
You know.
No, yeah, you're right.
Of course I'm right. I'm Ellie.
And I love the hearts, not the parts.
Well, that's what it is, so
It's
isn't it? Do you
amazing.
know what I mean?
Yeah, one of my really good friends, she always thought she was heterosexual. Well, you know, let's not put a label on it. She was interested in men.
Yeah.
And she fell in love with a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy. I make a joke of it sometimes because I realise, like, I like wise people because I couldn't be with somebody who I didn't feel as if I couldn't learn something off, and I consider myself quite intelligent in my own way. And I do like a beard. I like a nice, generous person with a good sense of humour. So I don't think I've got daddy issues. I think I've got Santa Claus issues. We worked out my ideal man is actually Santa Claus.
Really?
Actually, yeah. And I think back as a kid, I never got to sit on Santa's knee, and that could be, I don't know.
Wow.
I'm reaching there, by the way. Do you know what I mean?
Interesting,
But
though.
it's isn't it though? Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where you recognise things within yourself. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Sort of thing. And so I suppose my ideal person would probably look like someone like Greengrass from Pete.
Aw. So you are actively looking for someone?
No,
No, not
no,
actively,
no. I'm all for serendipity. I think I think what's meant for you will not pass you by.
Yeah.
You know, that's my viewpoint, and if it never happens, then I have got masses of family around me, and I have masses of close friends, and I am totally fine. I don't need another person to validate me.
Oh, that's really good. That's
know, I
really
really
important in
don't.
life.
Just in general.
Yeah. What would you say to someone that says listening to this podcast now and they're experiencing gender dysphoria and they need to find themselves? What advice would you give them?
I would say first thing to do is sit yourself down. Sit yourself down and have a meeting with yourself.
I love the idea of that.
Realise that how you feel today is absolutely valid. But also realise that how you feel in 3 months, 6 months, a year's time might be different from how you feel today. So schedule those in. Seek community. You know, seek community. And if you're listening to this podcast and if you've got any issues around your own gender identity, feel free to reach out, because I'll have a virtual couple with you. And wherever you are in the country, I'm sure I'll be able to link you up with an organisation or with people that I'm aware of around the country, because I'm pretty well connected in that way, do you know. And like, just because you feel that way, it doesn't mean that you have to run down the road getting full transition, hormone surgery, all that type of stuff, you know, because every step of the way there's a lot of options. Even surgery, there's 3 options, like for downstairs surgery. More so for like the lads, if you will.
Right.
But isolation's a massive thing. Remember, try and go a bit easy on family members that are around you, because they will misgender you. You know, like, you have to remember, if your parent will probably feel a bit of grief when you come out. If you've got children, they could feel a sense of abandonment, and you're going to feel responsible for that, you know, as a human being. But that doesn't mean you don't be who you are. Because in the long run, by you being who you are, that helps the people around you to feel empowered to be who they are as well. And you can't reach your authentic community if you aren't willing to authentically be you. So, and none of us can do any of this on our own. You know, we truly can't. I could say, you know, I mean, we're doing this today, but I couldn't do this on my own. You couldn't do this on your own, you know, sort of thing. It's when people come together and we have the discussions. So I'd just say really be careful about isolating yourself. Also, if you're over 50, be extra careful, because isolation's a massive issue for the elderly population. And I know Age UK around the country do a lot of support for LGBTQ. I think sometimes some people, they're a bit fearful of going to an LGBTQ specific organisation. They'd rather, like, the Derby and Joan Club was more inclusive, or they'd rather the bowling club was more inclusive. But they sometimes feel as if they have to be taken away from their established groups to go to a special group where, like, it's almost like ghettoising people. And I'm really careful to try and not do that.
Yeah, that's
you
important.
know, sort of thing, because you can guarantee every catchment, every group will have an element of people who are LGBTQ. There will be people who within those organisations that have that experience. So why are you so different from anyone else?
Yeah.
You know, I think we haven't even touched on, like, neurodiversity. Like 1 in 4, just over 1 in 4 trans people who are on the study in Finland are actually also diagnosed on the autistic spectrum.
Right.
You know, most of the people I know over 50, they're certainly a bit neurodiverse. I think there's a lot more investigation to be done in that area. And I feel as time goes on, I feel the links of that will be made a lot clearer.
Right.
You know, so that's an interesting thing. But sometimes people will support and they'll just deal with the neurodiverse aspect, but not deal with the gender variance, or they'll just deal with the gender variance and not the others. That's why intersectionality is key.
Yeah.
So anybody who was listening to this and struggling to come to terms with who they are and where they're at, I would say, first of all, speak to someone that you can trust in confidence. And if you've got nobody around, then I would encourage you to reach out to me and I'm on all the social. I'm a bit of an attention whore, to be fair. I'm on all the social media platforms, and I am so I can able to be there for people, because when I was coming out, there was nobody. Do you know what I mean? And, like, I'd like to sort of. That's why I do radio as well. Because when I was growing up, I was like, I used to sit there and, like, the people on the radio would be my friends. Do you know what I mean? It could be like the James Stanning show, Alan Robson, Alex Hall, all that, who did the talk shows, and you know, and like Lisa Tarbuck, all that, like radio role models, if you will, for me. And like, now when I do a radio show, I'm trying to do a radio show that I would have appreciated back then, you know, sort of thing. So it's all about reaching out and realising that community doesn't happen unless you actually communicate. So don't be afraid to reach out and put your head above the parapets. And like the Evan Hansen song, you will be found.
Amazing. What a lovely phrase to end on. But before we fully finish, we have our regular questions.
Oh, yeah, here we go.
On a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being worst, 10 being best, how would you rate yourself at the following? Number 1, how good looking are you, Ellie?
Well, some days I look at myself and I think I would.
Brilliant.
Other days I look at myself and I think I'm stopping in today. So I think that's variable. So let's go with it. Let's go with a 6 for that.
Oh, I certainly can relate to that answer, to the second part of the answer. How funny are you?
Oh, 10 and a half.
Amazing.
10 and a half.
How good are you at cooking?
I'd say 9. I'd say 9 and a half. I can cook anything. I can do Apple-style authentic curries. I can make vegan palmos.
Wow.
I'm a brilliant cook. Well, that's a vegan fast food van I'm going to be having at 60, isn't there?
Of course.
I'm very good.
Brilliant. Are you a good singer?
I would say yes. Others may argue.
Okay.
I set up an inclusive choir. And it's not. I say it's not about being the best. It's about. I bring the passion. So I'm going to say an 8.
Great.
I'm going to say an 8.
I'm not going to challenge you. Alcohol drinking.
I don't really drink. I might drink like maybe twice a year. When I go big. But I'm really lucky that I've never known. I mean, I had addiction issues over the years around recreational drugs and stuff.
Right.
Blocking me out. But alcohol has never been an issue for me. So I might maybe 2 or 3 times a year I will get drunk. But then I could if I never had a drink now till the end of the decade, it wouldn't bother me.
Okay. Are you a good parent?
I think I'm a much better parent now than I was back in the day. So back in the day, I think I tried to be a friend. And I felt once the children got over 15-year-old, I felt as if they outgrew me. And I almost felt like the child. Whereas now I actually do feel like a responsible parent, if I'm honest with you. And I feel as if I'm good at it now.
Yeah.
But that's with years of experience, and so there's always room for improvement, so I'll say 7.5.
Cool. And sorry, they're meant to be quick fire questions, but this is my fault. But do they call you mum?
That's interesting because if we're out somewhere and like one of my sons will call me mum. Not mum, mum. And like my daughter calls me dad.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that because I know my daughter's proud of me. But I'm a dad.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. And I'm proud to be the dad, and hopefully they're proud that they've got a dad who's this proud trans woman.
Yeah.
But if we're out and about and in shops, and if they call me mum and it stops questions and stuff, I really like that. Do you know what I mean? So I go with anything, and I'll often just get called Ellie. But
lovely.
It's language. I know some families are different in that area, but I'm very much whatever we get, we get.
Cool. How good a friend are you?
I think I'm the best friend anyone could ever have, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah? It's a 10?
Yeah, well, I'd say 9 because trying to nail me down is a different matter. But when I'm there, I'm all there.
Okay, cool. How intelligent are you?
Oh, there's another thing. I think I'm very intelligent, to be fair, but I think I'm insightful.
Yeah.
I'm very insightful, contemplative, philosopher. I'm a philosopher, dreamer, poet type person.
Yes.
So I'm always going to leave space. I think nobody knows anything. Nobody knows everything. We always have to leave space to learn that bit more.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say 8.
Okay, great. How kind are you?
Oh, I'll just leave that at a 9.5.
Lovely. And how good at sex are you?
I'm going to say no comment.
Okay, fair enough.
It's all right. Because that's subjective, isn't it?
Absolutely.
You'd have to ask somebody else, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean...
I have a great time. You'd have to ask somebody else. That's a subjective question that I can't answer. Sort of thing. But
no problem.
I wasn't actually expecting that last question. I missed that one.
It always catches people by... I know, it's not a question I enjoy asking.
No,
but,
it's okay.
It's very personal, which is the whole point of it.
Well, it's PRsonal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ellie. You've been a fabulous guest.
Thank you for inviting me, and I really appreciate it. It's been fun, Charlotte. Thank you.